Hello, everyone. This is the 190th episode of the Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles and the Soccer Nostalgia blog. For this episode, I interview Belgian football fan Mr. Jean-Marc Richard as we discuss the Belgium national team during the 1980 UEFA European Championships. Welcome back, Jean-Marc.
Hello, Sean. How are you?
Last time we discussed the qualification campaign for the 1980 Euros. Let's remind ourselves of some of our discussions. As we come to this year 1980, Belgium has surprisingly qualified to the 1980 Euros. What was the general view regarding Belgium's chances in a group with hosts Italy, England, and Spain?
Well, in fact, Belgium was not considered as a favorite in this group. The big favorite of the group was England, because England was dominating the club level since 77. Liverpool and Nottingham had won twice the Champions Cup. Kevin Keegan was at his peak. He won twice the Golden Ball. If you look Spain was not so powerful at the time. They missed all tournament since World Cup 50 and the Euro 64 that they won. They were preparing the World Cup 82 at home, but they were missing a very good strikers, even if they had Santillana from Real Madrid and Crini, which will join Barcelona afterwards. So it means that Belgium could do something against Spain and Italy. They were at home. They were fourth of the World Cup 78, but they were missing Paolo Rossi, their main striker, due to the Totonero scandal. He was suspended for 2 years. So Belgium was, as I say, not favorite, was supposed to be difficult to beat. And the first goal was to avoid the last place of the group and maybe become second to play the playoff for the third place. They were not dreaming of the first place because, as I say, England was supposed to be strong and Italy at home, and it was the last match of the group for Belgium. So they were fearing what happened in Mexico 70. They played Mexico at the last game, and after 10 minutes, the referee gave a penalty which was not obvious, and Belgium was eliminated. So Tyson and all the teams were fearing the same thing because of the Italian public, Italian pressure. But the fact that they were unbeaten for a long while, they were confident that they could be an outsider, but not more. And in Belgium, it's always good to be an outsider and not a favorite.
In a few years, Belgian manager Gijs had built a solid team, relying on an efficient offside trap tactic. How was it viewed by the press and the public at this point?
He was very popular. He became very popular because when he started in 76, I mean, the teams from Raymond Goethals was at the end of a cycle, so he has to rebuild. He missed the World Cup in Argentina. Well, nobody say it was his mistake. And the goal was to qualify for 82 World Cup. So going to Italy was a good surprise. And he had built a strong team with a very strong spirit. And he was also very popular because he was speaking both languages. And so the press was totally in favor of him. Nobody said something against Tays. He was a nice guy, always available for everybody, for his player, for the press, as I say, speaking both national languages. So he was a very, very popular figure, and all the supporters were very confident in his ability to drive the team.
Thijs's integration of the veteran Wilfred Van Moer had been the catalyst for the qualification towards the end. What was Van Moer's role in the team?
Well, Van Moor had, I would say, two important roles in the teams. He was the missing link in the midfield. He was strong physically, even if he was older. He was in his 30s. He was very brilliant from a technical point of view and also very strong from a tactical point of view. And the second point, he has a lot of experience because the team was still very young. So he was the brain. He was the one who was able to give the tempo. And thanks to him, a few players improve. So it was certainly the brain and the most important player of the team at the end of the 80 qualifications campaign.
And let's remind everyone that at this point he's 35 years old, so he's very much looked upon as yesterday's man, but he's still very vital for Guy Theys's New Belgium.
Yeah.
Let's remind everyone of the backbone of this Belgian team.
He has his own team, which was almost always the same. He relies on four defenders. You had Gerrits, Meus, Milkamps, and Renkin. And there was just an hesitation in the beginning of the year 80 between Renkin from Standard de Liège and Maurice Martens from RWDM. But he chose Renkin because he was better in marking a man, and he thought it would be useful against players like the English Woodcock or the Italian Codio. In the middle, Van Moer, Coles, Van der Eycken were sure to play. Cook normally was the fourth, but he would be injured for the Euro and miss the tournament. Vercouteren was no longer there because he was absolutely out of form. And in front, you had Keulemans, Van der Els, and the newcomer Vandenberg, who were the best choice. There was only an hesitation in the goalkeeping role, either Custers or Pfaff, and we will discuss it afterwards, I think. It was his only invitation, but for the rest, the 9, 10 other roles were already defined.
What was Belgium's form during the preparatory friendlies ahead of the Euros? There's the match against Luxembourg, there's one against Uruguay, against Poland, and finally against Romania. All of them at home.
All at home, one each month, and they won everything, which was very good for the confidence. They won 5-0 against the Luxembourg, which is in a way normal, but it was a hat trick of Erwin van den Beek, his first under the national Belgian team. It was a little more difficult against Uruguay, which was maybe not in a top form at that time, but which was preparing its Mundialito at the end of the year, and they finally won this Mundialito. So it means it was a good Uruguay team. They won 2-1 against Poland and 2-1 against Romania, so it was very good for the confidence. But what surprised me a lot is that when I look at the attendance of those matches, it did not attract a lot of supporters. The maximum was 7,000 against Poland in a Hazel where you could place 50,000 supporters. There were a little less than 1,300 against Luxembourg and 4,000 against Uruguay and Romania. So it means even if everybody in Belgium was happy to see Belgium again in the final of a big tournament, there were not a lot of supporters going to the match, and it would be the same for the trip in Italy because only 30 supporters bought tickets to follow the three games of the team. And which was surprising also is that for the match against Romania, which was on a Friday night, Van der Berg was not playing because he was getting married on that day, which was very surprising. And normally Willy Wellens should have replaced him, but he got injured in the training session. It means he had to retire from the team, and Ronnie Martens was selected. And it's also a surprise because he was the only player from Anderlecht in that team, and Anderlecht was used to give a lot of players to the national teams. But at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, it was the end of the cycle in Anderlecht. So there was only one player from Anderlecht in the team of Thijs.
Some things to point out. In the match against Luxembourg, Mark Milkamps, brother of Luc Milkamps, made his international debut. The win against Poland was Belgium's first win over Poland since 1933. Incidentally, Erwin Vandenberg missed a penalty kick in that match, but he did score in that match as well from open play. As far as the match against Romania, that was the last international matches for Maurice Martens, earning his 26th and final cap. His first cap had been 1971, as well as Guy Dardenne. This was his 11th and final cap. His first cap had been in 1977.
Yeah, both would go to Italy, but did not play a single minute. And concerning Mark Milkamps, he was a very good player at the Belgium level, certainly better than his brother Luc. But there was a fierce competition in the midfield, so it was for him very difficult to find a place in this team. But he was a very, very good player, very technical, but a little slow for the international level.
You hinted about this earlier, and in fact, we discussed this in our last podcast as well. The goalkeeping situation where Theo Custers was the starter in the tail end of the qualification campaign, and in fact, for most of these preparatory friendlies ahead of Jean-Marie Pfaff. However, at the last minute, Gitais made the decision to select Faf ahead of Custers for the finals of the Euros. What can you say about this situation?
I think for Thijs, it was one of the most difficult decisions of all his career. As you say, Custos had made good matches when he was called. He was very popular among his teammates because he was a nice guy, and Pfaff was more eccentric. He was more an individual player. But in the Belgium Championship in 1980, he was outstanding. He made very, very brilliant matches. The last friendly against Romania, both play 45 minutes, and they were both very good. So it was difficult to choose, and he chose for Pfaff based on the form of the moment. And was it a good decision? Custos had problems to admit it because he was reliable and make nothing wrong. But well, it was his feeling, I think, something you cannot explain, but he was feeling that he should choose Jean-Marie Pfaff because of the form. And in fact, he made a good tournament in Italy, except maybe the last ball he got in the final.
Let's take a look at the final 22 players selected for these Euros by Guy Thys. For the goalkeepers, at number one, we have Theo Custers of Antwerp, who, like we said, would end up being the backup. Number 12, we have Jean-Marie Pfaff of Beveren, Belgian champions in 1979. And the third goalkeeper at number 20, you have the young Michel Prudhomme of Standard Liège. In defense, you have at number two, Eric Garrett of Standard Liège. Number three, Luc Milkamps of Waregem. Number four, Walter Muse of Club Brugge. Number five, Michel Rencan of Standard Liège. Number 13, Maurice Martens of RWD Molenbeek. And number 14, Gerard Plessers of Standard Liège. In midfield, you have number 16, Mark Milkamps of Waregem. At number 6, captain of the team, Julien Kuhls of Beerschot. Number 7, René van der Reyken of Club Brugge. Number 8, Wilfred Van Moor of Beringen. Number 9, Francois van der Elst of Anderlecht. Number 11, Jan Kulemans of Club Brugge. Number 15, René Verheyen of Lokeren. Number 18, Guy Dardenne of Lokeren. Number 19, Willy Wellens of Standard Liège. And number 21, Joseph Heilingen of Waterschei. Now, up front, you have number 10, Erwin Vandenberg of Liers. Number 17, Raymond Moments of Lokeren. And number 22, Ronnie Martens of Anderlecht.
Yeah, when I say that Martens was the only player, Van der Elst was still in Anderlecht, but he was transferred to New York
West Ham.
Cosmos.
Oh, New York Cosmos,
To New York
that's right.
Cosmos first.
Yeah, then West.
Yeah, so he finished the season at Anderlecht, but he was officially transferred to New York Cosmos. So there were two players of Anderlecht, but one who was leaving.
And of course, typically you would think that Ludo Cook and Frank Verkauteren would have been part of the squad as well, but for the reasons that you discussed, they did not make the final cut.
Yeah.
Ahead of the Euros, there was the threat of a strike by the players. Do you remember that?
Yeah, because it was very surprising at the time. But you must remember that in 80, Belgian Federation and Belgian football was still very amateur. I mean, the first year of professionalism in Belgium is 74, 75. So before the tournament, a group of 7 players had negotiation with the federation to discuss the premiums and so on. Each player was supposed to win 90,000 Belgian francs, which is about 2,200 euro for participating to the tournament, and 30,000 Belgian francs, so 750 euro per point won. And when they arrived in Italy a few days before the first match against England, the player discovered in the press that foreign countries were by far more generous. If you compare, for instance, with Germany, it was 4 times more in Germany. And so they were not very happy, and they asked for 50,000 Belgian francs. So it was an increase of 66% per point. A president of the Belgian Federation was a lawyer called Louis Wouters. He refused. And so the players say, we will do a strike, we'll call for a strike, and they would not play if the requirements were not met. But at the end, there were little trouble. In fact, they just started a training session with 15 minutes delay. And the Belgian Executive Committee found a solution, a typical Belgian compromise. They say, you ask 50, we propose 30. So we will arrange for 40,000 Belgian francs per point, so it's about 1,000 euro. It was very strange, and Tays was very angry and disappointed by the behavior of its player and called them grocers, which I don't know if you understand what it means, but a very small mentality. And he fears that it could have impact on the group, but in fact, it had no impact because they made a difference between money and being a team on the field. And maybe also it has a good impact because they showed that they were united before the first game. But the amount were not so important at that time. I think I would say a normal wage in Belgium was something like 30 or 40,000 Belgian francs. So it means they had 2 months average salary of a Belgian worker for going to euro. If you compare with what they earn now, it means they were not well paid, but it was the same for all countries. Even in the big countries, even if it was 4 or 5 times, it was still reasonable amounts if you compare with what is the case now.
And I believe it was Van Moor who convinced the players. I think he was instrumental in making the players to negotiate and start training, I believe.
Yeah, he was the most experienced, as we say, and he was also aware of what was really important. People in Belgium would not have understood that players who qualified for the first time since 72 would made a bad tournament because of money. It's not Dutch mentality, it's Belgium, so we expect them to give everything and not to play for money.
Do you remember where you were at this point in life and how you experienced these Euros?
Yes, I was 12. We are lucky in Belgium because all the matches were broadcasted free on Belgium television, and it's still the case for the big tournaments. There were 2 games per day, one in the late afternoon and one around 8 p.m. And Belgium played twice in the late afternoon, which was a good thing for me personally because I worked at the secondary school and I had examination. So it means that I was at home in the afternoon to study, but also to watch the games. And the only late kickoff was against Italy, but examinations were finished. So I could watch almost all the games. And what is also surprising is the stadiums were empty for most of the matches. Even for the match of Italy, it was not full. As I say, a lot of supporters did not travel. And the Italian public was, I mean, not happy because of the Totonero scandal, and were not interested in matches where Italy was not playing. So it means you had a very, very big stadium, very nice stadium for this period, being almost empty.
In a lot of the matches, if you watch it, you can actually hear the players because the stadium is so empty.
Yeah,
It was very poorly attended Euros, but that's a separate discussion. Belgium, like we mentioned earlier, is in a group with the hosts Italy, England, and Spain. So the first match is against England on June 12th at Turin at Stadio Comunale. This match would be remembered for other reasons, which we'll discuss. As far as the teams, for England, there are a lot of familiar faces. You have Ray Clements in goal, Phil Neal, Ray Wilkins, Kevin Keegan, of course, Steve Coppell, Trevor Brooking, and Tony Woodcock, among others, managed by Ron Greenwood. Let's look at the Belgian lineup for this match. You have Pfaff, Gerrits, Renkan, Van der Reyken, Milkamps, Muse, Van der Elst, Van Moer. He'd be replaced by Moments in the 88th minute. Vandenberg, Kuhls, captain of the team, and Kulemans. As far as the match, England takes the lead in the 26th minute with that brilliant goal by Wilkins, where he receives the ball at the edge of the box and he just lobs it over the advancing Belgian defense and actually beats the offside trap that they were trying to implement and lobbed over Pfaff to give England the lead. But Belgium would tie the match a few minutes later in the 30th minute when Van Moer took a corner kick from the right side. It was headed in the box. It led to a scramble in the box, and eventually Koulemans shot it in, and the match was tied. But obviously, it would be the events off the pitch that would grab all the headlines. The trouble starts in the stands in the English portion, and the Italian police are forced to use tear gas.
Yeah, it was just after the Belgian goal that the problems erupted. I think a few Italian supporters, I don't know what they say to the English supporter, but the English supporters sent smoke bombs and the match was stopped. And I remember Ray Clemens, which was crying on the bench. When the match resumed, it was almost over. It stayed 1-1. And even if a goal of Woodcock was disallowed at the end for offside, the match was broken by this interruption because of the first hooliganism in the national team. It was the first time that it was so important outside England, I would say. And at the end, the comments from Ron Greenwood and Kevin Keegan were more on the fact that the supporters were absolutely stupid and they were ashamed to be English than the fact that they have probably lost a point against Belgium. But I would say the result was quite normal because, except from this brilliant goal from Ray Wilkins, Belgium played well the offside traps. They make a tactic to avoid that English players find easily Kevin Keegan, and he changed position for a few times. At the end, he was in a position of a striker, but it was not, they were never able to find Keegan, and so they blocked everything. It was, I would say, one of the most important tactical masterpiece of Tace. It was the first match, but they would do exactly the same 2 years later against Argentina and Maradona, which was still a higher level. But it was typical of Belgium to avoid the other team to play. And the only concern is that during the first, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes, they were impressed by the English. I think they were not starting well. But after the goal, it was a 50-50 game, and certainly the result was quite normal.
I could not believe when I read this, but I think England were fined £8,000 for all the disturbances, which seems like a ridiculous low amount nowadays. I'm not sure. Was it maybe that was a
I'm not sure
standard?
that it was more because, I mean, it was not probably foreseen in the rules because
Uh,
it was one of the first major incidents. And you would have more in the 80s with the English supporters, especially abroad, until the Hazel drama 5 years later.
Belgium's next match is 3 days later on June 15th against Spain at Milan at San Siro. Again, for Spain, you have some familiar faces managed by the legendary Ladislau Kubala, who would leave his post as Spain manager at the end of this tournament. You have Luis Arconada in goal. You have Rafael Gordillo. You have Real Madrid's Juanito, Barcelona's Asensi, future Real Madrid and Spain national team manager Vicente del Bosque, as well as Kini, the striker of Sporting Gijon. For this match, Belgium wearing white, you have the following lineup: Pfaff, Gerrits, Renkin, Van der Eycken, Luc Milkamps, Muse, Van der Elst, Van Moer. He'd be replaced by Moments in the 80th minute. Vandenberg, he'd be replaced by Verheyen in the 81st minute. Kools, captain of a team, and Keulemans. In this match, Belgium takes the lead in the 17th minute. From the edge of the box in the center, Walter Muse passed to Gerrits on the right side, who shot across into the goal. Spain would tie the match in the 36th minute. Juanito takes a free kick on the left side, and Kini heads in the equalizer. In the second half, Belgium would score the winner. Koulemans' pass from the right side was deflected by a Spanish defender, and it reached to Kools, who struck in. And Belgium would win this match 2-1.
I remember it was a tight game, but I think it was a deserved victory. And I remember the two goals because the first one, it was, as you said, started by Meus and given to Garrett. So it means two defenders being in an attacking position. The shot of Garrett was powerful, but almost in the middle of the goal. And I think Arconada could have done better. But well, I remember also that the goal of Queenie was very strange because it was a header which lobbed everyone, including Pfaff. And for me, it was not really an occasion, but it was like that. And the second goal, everybody in Belgium remembers the rush of Jan Keulemans against Hungary in '82. But the goal of Coles is exactly the same way. So Keulemans did an outstanding work on the right, and his center was deflecting and arrived to Coles, which was very near the goal and who scored quite easily. But the first real big match of Keulemans on the international scene. It was this one. Van Moer was the man of the match against England, but Keulemans was certainly the man of the match against Spain. And it was so obvious that it was played in Milan, as you say, and just after that, AC Milan wanted him. And you may remember that at the time there was only one foreign player authorized for each Italian club. So it means he had made a good impression, but he did not go to Italy because he prefers staying in Belgium, in Bruges, where he made all his careers. And also, well, it was the match of the afternoon, and in the night, Italy won only 1-0 versus England. So it means that Belgium, who had scored 3 goals and conceded 2, had a better goal average than Italy, who only had an average of 1-0. And it means that if Belgium draws against Italy, they would go to the final, which changed a lot, of course, because if you had to beat Italy in front of their supporters, it's difficult. But with the team you have, with the mentality you have and the organization you have, because once again, against Spain, a lot of Spanish players were caught by the offside trap. And I mean, everybody knew that Belgium was playing like that, but it was difficult to find a solution to avoid the offside trap. The only one who did was Ray Wilkins in the first match. So it was a good match, good news, and now a possibility to go to a final for the first time since 60 years. The last time was the Olympic Games final in Antwerp, but Olympic Games at that time is absolutely not to compare with a European tournament.
This deciding match against Italy was on June 18th at Roma at Stadio Olimpico. For this match, there were like 60,000 fans in the stadium. So, as you mentioned, only the matches that involved Italy had decent attendance in this tournament. Gitis chose to be more cautious for this match, and he sacrificed Vandenberg and installed Raymond Moments in his place. And let's remind some of the big names in Italy. Of course, Paolo Rossi is suspended, as is Bruno Giordano, but you still have players like Dino Zoff, Gentile, Scirea, Causio, Tardelli, Graziani, Antonioni, Bettega, managed by the legendary Enzo Bearzot. And of course, many of these players would win the 1982 World Cup. For Belgium, you have the following lineup: Jean-Marc Pfaff, Gerets, Renquin, Luc Milkamps, Walter Muse, Kuls, captain of the team, Van der Elst, Van der Reyken, Moments. He'd be replaced by Vandenberg in the 78th minute. Van Moer, he'd be replaced by Verheyen in the 49th minute, and Keulemans. Belgium chose to play for a tie, and they just got that, and they maintained a scoreless tie to qualify for the final. And we have to mention that Antonioni was injured in the 35th minute after a foul by Garrett, and he was replaced. I think Italy also had a penalty claim after Walter Muse handled in a box. I think Muse later admitted to journalists that he had actually handled, but in any case, the referee did not call that. And Belgium earned a scoreless tie and eliminated Italy and advanced to the final.
The first thing to mention is the fact that Van den Berg was dropped off the team because he had not a good tournament. He was 21 years old at the time, and the pressure for him was too important. And Thijs chose Moments, which was not really a striker or even a forward. It was more a number 10, old-fashioned number 10 of Lokeren. It's very surprising because Moments would play also the final. He would also play the third place match against France in '86. So it means this guy has not a lot of matches, but he played very important matches in the Belgium team, which means that for Thijs, he was someone very reliable, not certainly a basis player, but certainly a good substitute. He chose for a very compact team, and they played less the offside trap because he was afraid of a decision by the linesman or of the referee because of the pressure of the Italian crowd. And he say, well, let's be cautious. Maybe he can whistle 5 times, but 6 times maybe he would forget to whistle. So I don't want to play this outside trap also. One important role in this match is Van der Eycken. He gave the tempo of the match. In fact, he gave no tempo to the match because Belgium was playing very, very slowly, waiting for Italy to come. And Italy was not able to make the game at that time. It was a very, very hard game. There were 5 yellow cards given, but the referee could have given, I would say, 15. When you look at the match on the internet, the foul, nowadays you would have a few red cards. There was a bet fall at the beginning from Oriali on Van Moer, and Van Moer was slightly injured but could go on until the beginning of the second half. And it was a fear in the Belgian team because in '72, in the quarterfinal against Italy, Bertini broke the leg of Van Moer in the quarterfinal. Belgium qualified for the semi-final, but Van Moer missed the semi-final versus Germany. And everybody says now, if he was there, maybe we would have won. Nobody knows. And you say also an important event in this match is the fact that Antonioni, which was a very brilliant playmaker at Fiorentina, was fault. I thought it was by Van der Eycken, and everybody says Van der Eycken should have had a red card. Well, maybe, maybe not. But the fact is that Antonioni had to go out of the pitch, and at the end he was quite fair play because he said it was not a big fault from Van der Eycken, but it was because in Italy those kind of faults were at the time permitted, because certainly for me now it would be a red card. And you say also the penalty for hands of Meus. Well, I have watched again the pictures yesterday on the internet, and it's very difficult to say if it's in or out or on the line. But Belgium was very lucky to escape the penalty because you could have given a penalty, even if the image of that time are not so precise that of the image of now. It was only a free kick, and not big saves to make. At the end, he made a big save against Causio, and Michel Renquin was outstanding, and he played probably the best match of his career under the Belgian shirt. And which was also very disappointing is the behavior of Mr. Beazot, which was normally a gentleman. After the match, he says that it was a shame that Belgium qualified because they don't play football. There was a penalty. Maybe right, and Van der Eycken should have got a red card, maybe right. But when you remember how Italy would play in '82 versus Argentina, Gentile against Maradona, it's very strange to say that Belgium did not play football because they play catenaccio like Italy did a few hundred times in the past and would still do in '82. So, of course, it's a small country. You cannot expect them to play full attack versus Italy at home. So it was a little disappointed, and Thijs was not happy of the comments of the Italians. But I think the one which were not happy also were the German, because they were present at the match. They had qualified the day before, so the German team was there, and they say, well, it will be difficult, Belgium, because they are very compact and it's a difficult team to break. So Italy plays more offensively at the time, of course, than Belgium. So it was, I would say, also a new tactical masterpiece by Thijs, because Italy has, as I said, not a lot of opportunities to score. And Belgium had not a lot too, except one for Van der Elst and a shot of Keulemans outside of the box, which goes near the post.
Well, Van der Eycken cut the eyes of the Italians, and he would join Genoa afterwards.
Yeah, but he did not make a very good season because he was often injured and came back to Belgium afterwards to Anderlecht.
So, what was the general outlook ahead of facing West Germany in the final?
Of course, Germany is the favorite. They won in 72. They lost in the shootout against Czechoslovakia 4 years later. So it means Germany, even if were not very good in 78 at the World Cup, is the big European team of that period of the 70s, maybe with the Dutch, but they won something. The fact that Belgium has not lost an official match since November 77, so almost 3 years without losing an official match. The last defeat was in Northern Ireland for the 78 qualification campaign, but it was more friendly because both teams were animated. They lost only a friendly, I say, in this period. So they say, okay, we are not favorite, but who could beat us? So it's terms of percentage, I think it was something like 60-40 in favor of Germany, but Belgium still believed that it was possible. And the fact that it was possible, that the Belgian Federation decided to rent a plane to send a few hundred supporters to Roma. As I say at the beginning, there were not a lot of supporters, or there were a few hundreds in the final against Germany in a stadium less than full. And the German players, as I say in the press, I have found back some old newspaper. They would, well, of course, you always say something against something positive against your opponent, but as I said, they say Belgium is compact, it's hard to dismantle, so it's very difficult. And what was also very surprising at the time, that there was a fear of the referee. It was Mr. Nicola Reinea from Romania, and the Belgian Federation had a problem with him back in 75. He was the referee for a match against East Germany in Brussels, and when he came, he asked to the Belgian Federation to pay the travel and the hotel for one of his friends. And of course, the Belgian Federation refused. And now they fear that he could be partial in the final, which would certainly not be the case. We will speak of the penalty that Belgium was awarded. And the fear was also that Germany moved a lot on the pitch. Joop Derval has very offensive teams. He had players like Hansi Müller as playmaker, Rummenigge, Alofs, Rubesch. So it was this problem that Thijs has to resolve, how to avoid this lot of moves on the pitch from the German team.
The final is on June 22nd, again at Roma at Stadio Olimpico. And the German team, again, a lot of familiar faces. Harald Schumacher in goal, Manfred Kals, Karl-Heinz Forster, Uli Stielicke, Hans-Peter Bregel. One of the standouts and discoveries of this tournament, Bernd Schuster, others you mentioned, Hansi Müller, Rummenigge, Rubesch, Klaus Allofs. A good team playing a 4-3-3 formation. Gitis chose to maintain the team he selected for Italy. Once again, moments started ahead of Vandenberg. Now, the crowd for this final would be like 48,000, which is again very low considering it's a final. But of course, had Italy qualified, it would have been substantially more. Now, looking at the Belgian lineup for this final on June 22nd, you have Faf, Gerrits, Luc Milkamps, Muse, Renkin, Van Moer, Van der Eycken, Julian Kuhls, captain of the team, playing in his final match for Belgium, his 35th and final cap. His first match had been in 1974. Van der Elst, Momens, and Kulemans. In this match, West Germany would take the lead in the 10th minute. Bernd Schuster, after a combination with Klaus Allofs, he passed to Hrubesch at the edge of the box, who chested the pass and then volleyed past Faf. Belgium would tie the match deep into the second half. In the 72nd minute, Stielicke was adjudged to have fouled Van der Elst in the box, and Rene van der Eycken would score from the penalty kick. Germany would have to wait until 2 minutes before the end to score the winner, as the match looked likely to be headed to a tie. So there's a corner kick on the left side. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge takes it, and Hrubesch heads in the winner. And West Germany become the Euro champions for the second time in their history after 1972. Gitis acknowledged that West Germany were better and were the winners?
I mean, there were two different parts in this match. In the first half, Germany were definitely better. So they scored one goal, but they could have scored more. They were very dominant, and Schuster and Briegel did a very, very impressive performance, and it was difficult for Belgium to cope with. In the second half, Belgium was better and better. And when they got this penalty, even if we must be honest, the foul was outside from Stielicke. So for me, it was probably a free kick and not a penalty, but it could have been a red card for Stielicke if it was a free kick. I mean, after that, it appears that Belgium was physically stronger than Germany, which is very, very strange if you consider normally the standard of the German footballers. But Belgium mentally was there. And till now in Belgium, a few players of that time are convinced that if they had gone to extra time, they should have won or they would have won. At the end, a sign which is important, all German players went to Schumacher to congratulate him because he had a few important saves before the corner of Rummenigge and the header of Rubesch. Well, it was not certainly a stolen victory from Germany, but the fact that it arrived 2 minutes before the end, and I must say that even now, you never know if it's the fault of Milkamps or of Pfaff, but personally, the ball is probably 6 meters outside of the goal. And well, probably Milkamps was surprised and slow to react, but Pfaff came also too late. And for me, he was responsible. He could have done better, even if Rubesch was 1 meter and 91 centimeters, so very powerful, very strong. But you could have avoided because all the corners from Rummenigge were shot in the same way. So it's probably the only mistake defensively from Belgium in the tournament, but it's a little disappointed. So in French, we say l'appétit vient en mangeant. It means that when the more you eat, the more you are hungry. And the fact that you were not expected to go in the final does not mean that you are not disappointed when you lose, when you lost at the last minute.
For Gitais, his team's player of the tournament was Jan Kulemans. Yeah, this was his breakout tournament
Yeah,
for
he was certainly because he was not yet so well known in the international level. And we have to remember that the first matches he plays for the Belgium team were not convincing. So he was certainly the best player, the more impressive. But I would say that Garrett, Renkin, Van Moer, Van der Eycken were also key figures. The other ones were all at their level. And only Vandenberg was disappointing, but as I say, he was still very young. So it was a good tournament of the whole team.
despite the loss, was there belief that Belgian football was a force now?
Yeah, because qualifying for the final eight was already a performance, and going into the final, maybe you are not the second team in Europe because it's not because you are in the finals that you are the second team, but you are certainly among, let's say, the five or six best teams in Europe at the time. So yes, Belgium national team, well, it was the best performance ever, and it's still the best performance ever of a Belgian national team, with the exception of the Olympic Games. But as I said, Olympic Games, it's something different. Huh?
Were Belgium confident for the upcoming World Cup qualifiers as a result? Was there now a pressure for them that they had to qualify?
Yes, and as I said before, the goal has always been Spain 82. And reaching the final of Europeo 80 certainly added pressure, as everybody expects now Belgium to qualify. But it was a group which was not obvious with Netherlands. Maybe they were declining, but it's still a difficult team to play for Belgium. France, who made a correct World Cup in 78, missed Europeo 80, but with the performance of Saint-Etienne and the upcoming of people like Platini and so on, was becoming a force. And Ireland, which is always difficult to play for Belgium, as always with the British or with the British team. So there were two countries qualifying in this group of four. So of course it was, I would say, necessary to qualify, but not so obvious if you see this group.
In closing, historically, how do Belgian football historians regard the performances in these 1980 Euros. Is it regarded as one of the greatest successes of the national team? It certainly was in the modern times at that point in time. But looking back, I guess almost 50 years later, is it still considered one of the greatest successes of the national team?
Yes, certainly, because it's the best performance, a second place, a silver medal. And you have to consider the teams you play against, because you play four European big teams. I would say one of the well, four of the six biggest. You play England, Spain, Italy, and Germany. You can add maybe France and Netherlands, and you have the best team in Europe. If you compare with Mexico, for instance, you have fourth in the World Cup in Mexico. As I say, it was more due to a lot of luck. And well, you only beat Iraq in 90 minutes. And you play Mexico, you play Paraguay, you won against USSR, but after extra time, you win on shootout against Spain. There were a lot of luck, and it was not so convincing. Must remember that at the time, after the first round, everybody says Tace must quit. This team is absolutely no value. And after, okay, it's everybody has forgotten this. And if you compare with Russia, the third place in 2018, which is the best performance in a World Cup, well, in Russia you beat in Brazil and you beat England, which are very good performance. But the other games, you play Japan, you play Tunisia, you play Panama. So Russia, you had a very talented teams playing in big European clubs. And in Italy, 80, it was a little unexpected because it was more a band of good friends playing together and very gifted players. All the players were playing in Belgium, with the exception of Van der Elst, which would go to United States. And these teams bring back Belgium on the map of Europe and international football. And it was a typical Belgian team with no real star, a very strong team spirit, very good organization, and a very strong mentality. So it was typically Belgium card. And I think for me, it's still the best performance ever of a Belgian team, because you did not have a lot of luck, except maybe the penalty against Italy, but the place in final was deserved. And the fact that we had no great expectation at the beginning, except, I say, avoiding the last place of the group, is still, for me, the best performance. And as I said, if you compare with the teams you had to play and you had to be not to lose, because you only won a game out of four, but the tournament was so that you were able to go in the final with only one victory in three matches.
We should mention that this would be the reference point for Belgium's future teams in the 80s and all the World Cups that would follow. I mentioned earlier that it was Keulemans' breakout tournament, but you could say the same for Gerrits, for Muse, for Van der Reyken. So, in many aspects, this was a reference tournament for Belgium in its football history.
Yeah, and after that, a lot of players went abroad. So you mentioned Gerrits, Van der Reyken, Keulemans refused, but all the other, Pfaff, Vandenberg, afterwards Verkouteren and so on, they would also go to foreign countries. So it means learning something else, improving their technical skill and their pace, probably. So it was the beginning of an important change in the Belgian football, because you would never have a team with 10 or 11 players playing in Belgium. So it was certainly something which changed the Belgium football and the Belgian national team for years.
With that, I would like to thank you for your participation in this interview. All our respective contact information is listed on the blog and podcast uploads. So, Jean-Marc, thank you once again and hope to continue these discussions on Belgian football history.
Thank you, Shan. You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.